So another thing that we do while we're crafting our story is try and think about what the visual component will be and make sure that it's visually engaging. Some of the best stories out there are actually told purely with visuals. And we've made some videos about this, and we've talked a lot about this, that right now in the world that we're living in, something that's really shareable is something that can be viewed with the sound off and something that is engaging over someone's shoulder.
If you're making something outside of YouTube for, let's say, Instagram or Twitter, it's not guaranteed that the person watching is gonna have their sound on. So making and telling a story that's completely visual and can be understood without the sound on is super important.
And that's kind of this element of show, don't tell. So if you do have a story where you're trying to explain something, or again, someone is going through an experience, you want to think through what are the visual components of that, and is the story going to come across just through the visuals? Because that's when it becomes the most impactful. So a great example of this is we spent some time with a scientist named Nick Uhas, and we went to his laboratory here in LA, and he does this experiment called elephant toothpaste. And basically what happens is he sets up like this big beaker. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
He sets up this big beaker, and then he mixes two chemicals, and then it explodes. It's an incredibly visual experience.
Now look how much more enjoyable this is going to be if we just play it for you, even with the sound off. So the difference between Samir just telling you what happens versus just enjoying it and seeing the visuals, that's what we're talking about here. Try and come up with different ways that you can tell your story visually without always just having to tell people.
Another example of that, of how we did this in this course, is we had Colin draw certain things. And that's also just to kind of engage you visually and make sure that we're telling our story and explaining our points through visuals. It's really enhanced in a YouTube video when you're saying it and showing it.
Let alone when the visuals are this good, as I'm sure you know.
Rate his visuals. Okay. Yeah, rate his visuals. You can tweet at us.
Is there a comment section?
So when you do both in a YouTube video and you can say something and you have really impactful visuals, that's when something becomes really engaging. And so how we use this in our brainstorm is we start to think about what's the visual component of what we are trying to tell. So if we were brainstorming and thinking about this surfing video, what are some things that we would think is really important visually?
Probably waxing the board, getting ready, the whole setup experience can be done visually as opposed to telling you, all right, now I'm getting ready to go surfing. There can actually be a bunch of visuals in terms of getting your board ready, putting the wetsuit on, and walking out to the beach.
I think one of the things that I would want to come across and as we're brainstorming think about is how do we visually show that it's challenging? We don't want to make it look like a walk in the park if it's not. If it's actually challenging, then as he's going through the process, we want to make sure that we're capturing it properly. And that might be by sending a GoPro with them and mounting it on the surfboard so that we can see the instability, and as they're learning how to surf, like it's clear they don't know how to do it. And so there's certain ways that we want to make sure you understand the picture that we're trying to paint here.
You also can have someone else react potentially to the size of the waves. And if they have a lot of emotion and they clearly are showing that they would be scared as well, that can help. I'm speaking specifically to a video where I went and tried to go surfing, and the waves were bigger than I would have liked them to be. And I was afraid, but also the person that I was with was afraid. And
he had a good reaction.
He had a great reaction, yeah.
And so as we're brainstorming, that's a really important component of what we're trying to do, is what are these visuals that's going to go over what we're saying to make this really impactful and make it feel like we're evoking the emotions we want to evoke, and that makes it shareable. And this kind of leads you into your shooting script or how you're going to film it. So you start to understand and can get a sense for, as you're planning, okay, what are the types of shots that I want to get in Act 1? To set up, right? What are the type of shots that I need to get in Act 2? What type of cameras do I need to paint this picture visually? And in Act 3, what do I need to set up to make sure that the payoff really hits visually?
Totally, you don't want to miss the Act 3.
No, so those are really important pieces. When we're doing our breakdown videos on our YouTube channel, this is the same kind of process. We're pulling a lot of different source footage, we're pulling a lot of different clips, and we're trying to make sure that as we're talking and giving you this information, that there's a visually stimulating way to explain it. And a lot of times we try and make analogies too. Same way that we did here with Jenga, we try and make sure that we're using something visual to explain our point that you can easily understand. So we do want to challenge you guys, because I think this is a really interesting thing to learn about storytelling. We want to challenge you guys to make a video with no sound. You can make it 15 seconds or less, and you can upload it to Instagram or Twitter and just tag us at Colin and Samir. So Think about an Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 structure that can happen in 15 seconds that's purely visual.
Arm wrestling.
Okay, you want to do this?
Actually, I don't want to go there.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm saying you could. It could be an idea that you would do. It's just not going to happen here in front of everyone.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Okay, all right, cool.
Rather not.
All right, so if I'm doing this challenge and making a short 15-second video, I'm probably wanting to do something that feels really visual, but also like something I do in my daily life. Visual storytelling, let's title this the perfect milk to coffee ratio, right? So you have kind of your context, your setup, your title. You have your audience, which is coffee drinkers. You have the emotion. You want them probably to have a conversation because there's going to be some people saying, no, that's not the perfect one. Or yes, a lot of people have opinions about this. All right, so that's your setup right here. Now your tension or your conflict is going to be basically these two things mixing. So
I mean, did you make a mistake, or is that how you wanted it?
that's how I like it.
That's a lot of milk. I'm just going to say that's a ton of milk.
So there we go. Now we have basically a story that can be told purely with visuals. If we title that the perfect milk to coffee ratio, and you just see the cup, which is your setup, then you see the Act 2, which is both the liquids mixing, and you kind of have that tension with stakes rising. How much milk is he going to put in? Clearly you thought it was too much. And then you have the payoff, which is, that's what it looks like. Then I take a sip. That could be told in 10 to 15 seconds.
So now that you have a better idea of what we're talking about, we want you to go and try and do the same thing. Come up with an idea, something that you could film and edit into a 15-second video that clearly shows an Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 structure completely with visuals.